All right. So with me today, I have Omari Scott. Hello, Omari.
Hello, how's it going, Ton?
All good, all good. A little bit tired, of course, middle of the night here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Um, don't be, I'm very excited to be here and do this Q&A. And the first thing I would like to talk a little bit about is how technology is shaping the way we can develop ourselves and the way we train. I want you guys to click on the link that's called 29 Start. So if you guys open that link, the point of this video is basically to show you what we can do when we combine technologies. So here we have a microphone on board. It's Henrik and William from Sweden sailing the 29er. And when we combine it together with a drone, we can get an overview and we can also hear what they're saying on board, which gives you a whole new perspective. Um, and this is just basically one way for you guys to combine different tech in order to find a completely new way of learning. And very interesting is that here we use two pieces of technology, but you can actually integrate a third one. So it's quite common today that you use some kind of device on the boat, not just a microphone, but also some kind of tracking device. And one of these devices, Omari, will test in the US pretty soon. So I will let you guys go back to Zoom now, and Omari will show you one of these devices. And there are, of course, many on the market, but this one will be tested in the US. So we'll circle back to you guys exactly how this device can help you. So Omari, please show us.
Yeah, hello guys. As Ton is talking about just about the technology that we have coming into the sport and how we're able to use these technology to help with training and bettering our skills. This weekend, I'm going to do a clinic that is going to be using the Vakaros, which is this device here. Hope everyone can see it. And basically, it just goes to the front of your boat. And what it does, after talking to the guy today, I learned it does a lot more than I thought. For me, I think this is a very good tool. It tells you heel angle, boat speed that the kids are doing, the angle that they're sailing. The other thing it does too, it's also like a tracker. If you're watching the track, it tells you the angles, the kids who are sailing, headers and lifts. Also, boat speed. So for me, I think this is very important when you're doing boat speed. If you have a handful of kids, you can, or adults, whatever it is, you can have boats line up and you can tell if one person is slower than the other, you can compare the difference between them, right? So you can compare what this one person is doing compared to the other person. And basically, it's really good for them to learn off each other. One of the biggest things this also does, it helps with the starts. Like this, it tells you when someone is over the line. So if I have one of these on my boat, as soon as I'm over, it goes red. That means that you're over. So you don't have to wonder, was I over or not? This actually tells you that you are over. And if you have a clean start, it's green, you keep going. So no shouting at the kids, you're over, you're over. They'll just be able to see this go red and they immediately know that they're over. It also tells them when they clear the line. So if they have to come back to restart, if they don't clear, it will stay red. And once they clear, it will go green and they can restart safely. So one thing it does, it helps a lot with boat speed to compare boat speed between boats so sailors can make adjustments to see what other people are doing to be fast compared to what they're doing. It also helps hugely with the start line. For even for race committees, it will help where it tells them whether or not they're over, whether or not they're clear. But then also on the race course itself, it gives you a lot of information about the wind and where you're actually sailing so that you could go back and use it. It tells the gates, it tells the difference, it gives you ladder runs, all these different things. So I've not worked with this tool, but after talking to the guy who has more experience and he kind of shed some light on the things that it can do, I'm really impressed and very excited to try this out this weekend. So this is one of those other tools that are coming seemingly very quickly into the class as well.
Yeah, and I think we also need to let you guys know that tools like that are, of course, not allowed if you're in a regatta. That's not a training regatta. Um, for some classes, the laser, for example, Ilka, they now started to allow cameras on board. So we are moving towards a direction where more technology is allowed on board, even during real regattas. But I don't see this tool being allowed in the near future. But it's still a really great tool for training and training regattas, because what you can also do when you have all the three types of equipment, so you have the microphone, you have a drone, and you have a Vakaros or a similar tool, you can put an overlay into your video. So instead of just having the audio and the video, as in the 29 start, you can also in there add the data from the Vakaros, for example. So there you can see, like, when did you start accelerating? What was your speed compared to the other boats? All this will be automatically updated into the video. And we will in the future show you how this is done. And I also think maybe for these special devices, this is not something that all sailors own themselves. It will probably be something that coaches have a limited set of time on that they borrow, for example, and then maybe the whole training group uses it for a clinic or something. This is how I envision it to be.
Yeah, Ton, there was a question from Andrew in the chat. He was asking what the name of the device was, so maybe he's got it already, but if he didn't, it's called Vakaros, Vakaros. So that's the name of the device. I think it's called the Vakaros Atlas. And from what I heard too, they're doing some more development as well to make this thing a bit smaller and do some more things. So it's definitely coming to the class. And as Ton mentioned, now in the other classes, I know some of the other classes are using it for regattas and stuff now. But it seems like we're getting to a point where technology is being more and more introduced into underwater.
Yeah, and speaking of technology, we're gonna give you some examples of the cameras that you can use. So here I have shared my screen, and these are 360 cameras. So what is a 360 camera, and why is it, in my opinion, better than a normal action camera? Is it because you can just put it up and then you can basically record everything that's happening, but you don't really need to know what you're recording, because you can, in post-production, that is when you come back and you download the file, you can choose where to look. And this is great because you don't really know what's going to happen until it has happened. So if you have a race, training regatta, of course, in Opti, because cameras are not allowed in real regattas, then you can see, okay, in this situation, there was something really interesting happening in front of me, and 2 seconds later, there was something happening behind me, and both of these will be caught with just one camera. And these cameras that I show here are the three big brands, basically. So you have DJI, GoPro, and Insta. Not that important which one you choose, but I will share this also later with you guys, but I'll show you quickly here. I made a comparison. There are some advantages and disadvantages to each one of them, but basically you cannot go wrong here. I would say my personal favorite is probably the Insta360, and the reason for that is it is a little bit faster to work with, in my opinion, and you can add these overlays that I spoke about. So it's easier if you want to connect your Vakaros, for example, you can put that data onto the file a little bit faster and a little bit easier than you do with the rest. But otherwise, they are kind of similar, all these. So that's what's happening in terms of cameras nowadays. But there's also one more thing that's coming into the market quite strong now that I've seen some of my older sailors use, maybe not Opti sailors yet. And that is when you have glasses with a camera. So instead of you have a fixed camera on board, you put glasses on you, and then there's a camera inside the glasses, and they're of course waterproof. And then the camera will basically follow your eyes. So whatever you watch, the camera will record. And I think this is great, especially because it will show you how different sailors pay attention to different details when sailing. Omari, have you heard about this technology before? Is this something you come across?
No, I kind of heard that from you earlier today, and kind of amazed by it, because I do think a lot of times when the sailors are sailing, we tend to not know what they're looking at. And, you know, as a coach, if you're able to kind of see what they're looking at, you can kind of correct them and say, hey, at this point, this is what's more important to focus on over what you're looking at there, and can just really just help train their minds to be looking in the right places at the right time. So, I mean, it's pretty new and it's pretty cool. I would love to see that for sure and experience with that, but I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so basically what's happening is that you have these big brands like Oakley cooperating with Meta or another tech company, and then they produce the glasses as a corporation. And these glasses are, of course, very expensive, so this is not something you should immediately rush to buy. But I think it would be extremely useful to have two different sailors in the same race, and then you compare like what are these guys actually looking at. And of course, these glasses can then automatically help you with giving you the data that you need if you want some input while racing, which is of course also not legal in real regatta, but it could be really great to see things like you can see your course when you're sailing. So it's basically like a little mini helper. So it could be also good for training purposes as well. And that, I think, is enough about the tech. I know not all of us are that interested in tech. So we're going to move on a little bit and talk about the latest developments in sailing. So the idea is that we here in Vertical, we're going to help you and just let you know what's going on in the market. So today we decided to update you guys on the latest sail developments. So here we have basically 4 of the biggest sail manufacturers. Of course, there are more, but these are the ones who chose to contribute to this session. So what we did is we asked them, okay, what's going on in the market? And then they came back to us and said, okay, this is new. And actually, Omari, let's start with CD Sales here. It's one of the biggest brands, I think, in your club. And I heard also that you were one of the pioneers for this brand.
So I mean, with CD Sales, I just really like the team. The guy Claudio who does the development, he's like a mad scientist. Like he never quits. He's always trying to figure out how to tweak something to make it better, even though sometimes it's almost perfect. But with someone like that, it's always like you always know that person is trying to put out what they consider the best. And I think for the other sail brands, it's similar, but they work with customers very well. With the sails, now they're doing 2 different brands. They have the crosscuts, which they come with flat and medium power and a booster sail. But now they're also doing the new DRS, which is the radial, half crosscut, where you have the radial on the bottom end and the crosscut at the top. And the big difference I see with those sails is just keeping the shape. I think the crosscut sails tend to bend out of shape quite a bit, especially when the wind begins to pick up. But with the radial pattern, it actually helps to maintain the shape of the sail in all conditions, which is key because the sails are created and made a certain way. And that shape that they're made in is supposed to be when they're the fastest, right? So when you use the radial cut, what it does, it keeps that shape. It does take more material to make, which is why if you do get any of those sails, it is a little bit more expensive. One sail as well also has a sail that's going in that direction. And I think they all feel like it's the same thing, right? Maintaining the shape of the sail in conditions so that you're not at a disadvantage once the wind starts to pick up. So that's kind of like the difference and the mindset behind the DRS or the half radial, half crosscut. And if you look at both sails in certain conditions, you can definitely see that the DRS will keep its shape a little bit more than the crosscut sail. But the crosscut sail in the crosscut area where the radial is a little bit deeper. That's the thing. So wherever the radial pattern is, it's a little bit more flat because of all the extra material and stuff and it keeping its shape. Whereas with a crosscut, the foot of the sail, that area is a little bit more deeper just because of the design.
Yeah, so basically all brands today now have a crosscut and some kind of semi-radial. And what does it actually mean? So if you look at this sail, you can see that from the back of the sail, you have these stripes, which basically you see the cloth is cut in a different way from the top of the sail. So that's what we mean by semi-radial. And if you would have a fully radial sail, you don't have that in the optic, then you would have cuts going on or seams going all the way to the top. And from my understanding, it has been tried also to have a radial all the way, but what's happening is the top of the sail becomes far too stiff and it's not really working. All sail makers are basically moving towards 2 lines, so they have a fully cross cut, which is you don't have this bottom part, and then they have another line with the bottom part. But I think they also approach it a bit different. Just because 2 sails are semi-radial doesn't mean they're the same. We can see here that CD, they have the DRS line, which is the semi-radial. And according to them, they have different shapes for all the free DRS sails, while some other brands have the same shape, but they change only the depth. But from my understanding, they also try to change the whole shape a little. So let's move on a little bit because we need to also watch some videos in the end where we actually discuss some sailing. Let's move to one sails. So they, as I said, the companies have some different approaches. The one sails, what they did with their sail was that they have this basic lineup. Let me see if I can find it here. So on the right side, I think all of you know already they have the standard lineup and they have the advanced lineup. So what they did now is they started to radialize, which means like they convert their normal lineup, especially the advanced lineup, into radial cuts. So they're not actually changing this shape, the same as the CD did with the RS. They're trying to keep the shape, but try to make it a little bit more stable by using this radial foot. So if you're happy with the sail that you have now, it's also possible to get the same shape, the same sail as a radial. And that's the new thing for them. And they're also developing two new sails. One is a little bit deeper, and one is for 45, 50 kilo each sail that they haven't named yet. But these are the new designs that they are developing. Otherwise, they are basically just converting what they already have, which is not a bad thing sometimes because some of these shapes are really great. I love personally, for example, the GM, this one, Advanced GM, which is a great sail for lighter sailors. And it's also the sail that Marco Gradoni won 3 World Championships with. So it's a good sail. But we have also some newcomers, or actually they're very established, but I would say kind of a comeback in the Optimist, and that is the North sails. So Omari, have you used any North sails yourself?
Yeah, I have not this new set that they have coming out, but a couple of years back, I remember they did come back with a couple other sails that were working really well, and I just think it took a while to take to the market just because they were kind of away for a little bit, and there were other sails that were already kind of dominated the market. So it's really hard to make that change when there's others that are ahead already. But now I think they've come out with a new line again. That seems to be okay. There's a few kids here in the US that are using them. I know in Europe a little bit, there's some people beginning to use them and are happy with them. But not necessarily myself used much of these sails. I haven't really had one to test either. So I don't know, but it seems like there's people who are liking these sails.
Yeah, and from what I understand, what they're actually doing here, first and foremost, maybe is that they drafted Simone Ricci as the developer and contributor to the team, and is, as you guys know, one of the best coaches in the world. And together with him, they have developed not this lineup actually, because I think he wasn't part of the development of this lineup that they have now, but of the extension of the lineup. So what they have now here is you can see they have the C line and the R line, which basically means the radial and crosscut, and they have two different weight classes. And now they're developing in the crosscut section, they are adding a sail that's a little bit flatter. So it would be kind of, it's not named yet, but it would be a C5 if you would use the same terminology. And they're also adding a C8 for heavier sailors. And these are the developments that they're working on. And the idea is that they want to have a sail that's workable in all conditions. So they're not so specialized in the sails, as I understand it, but they want to be fast in everything and not slow in something. And I heard that they are starting some clinics. So I think that's quite new. I don't think North Sails had any clinics before.
Yeah.
Finally, we have J Sails. And that's actually gonna take us to the next section of this call, where we will show you some sailing videos and start discussing. But what's very interesting is that, as you guys know, they have the classic lineup. I will show you here. So they have the classic lineup, and then they have 4 weight classes in the lineup. So they have green for light sailors and black for very heavy sailors. And then they have the 2.0 lineup, and then they did some experiments and they came up with this 3.0 blue sail, which I think some of you guys used, but I don't know if they weren't happy with it. But as I understand it, they're now developing another new sail in the same weight range as the 3.0. And this something that's not named yet, but I will just call it the ROC, that is Regatta of Champions prototype sail. And it's an all-round sail, and it was used at the ROC by basically the whole elite in the world. So they all got to test it, and they got lots of feedback for that. Because it's a prototype, I can't really tell you guys yet exactly what they have done because it's still a secret and they're still working with it. Yeah. But the good thing is that all the videos we're gonna watch now, not all of them, but most of them, gonna have sailors with this sail. So you can also like see the sail in action, even though that's not the focus. The focus will be, of course, to discuss what the sailors are doing. But it's the same sail. So whenever you see a ROC sail, that is a sail with not the normal sail numbers, then you'll know this is the ROC prototype sail. So, guys, the first sailor we have is Manuel Braganca. He is the fourth. He was fourth at the Worlds this year in the light wind, and he won the Regatta of Champions. So he's for sure one of the best sailors that we have right now. And this guy in yellow. So let's have a look. So we start together this video, and after a while it's gonna change to another sailor, and then we stop, and then we can talk a little bit about Manuel. So yeah, let's start together in 3, 2, 1, go. And we will be able to go back to the sailors we've seen early in this video because we have the best sailors in the world now that we're going to watch. And maybe the first time it's really hard to like, well, what am I going to ask? I don't really know. But then when you have seen like 3, 4 more others, you will start to see that they're not using the same style, and then you can ask about that. But here at least you can see if we look at the way he has set up his sail and everything, you can see that his outhaul is quite deep. But still, his main sheet is going very far in for a Yasail. I don't know if you guys have used the Yasail Classic line, but normally you have the boom quite far out, maybe sometimes even outside the corner, because that's how they design. While if you have a CD sail or one sail, the advanced one sail at least, then you will have the boom much further in. So yeah, there we have it. We can pause. Omari, do you want to add something to this video?
I can comment on that. So, I know Manuel pretty well. At Worlds, I did a clinic where he was part of it, and he was very fast in the clinic leading up to the Worlds as well. I think he'll also be sailing with my team for Orange Bowl because he just won South Americans as well. But one of the things that he did really well, and I'm not sure if most of you guys could see it because it's the video, it's you have to be very aware of what's going on, is that he's really, really active with his main sheet. So every time he's going through every chop or every wave, you can see the boom go out and in and out and in. And that's very important for boat speed. One of the big things with boat speed is we need to understand that we have to shift gears. So every time we're heading up or heading down for a wave, we have to change our sail trim as well. And that's one of the things with Opti sailors is probably one of the hardest things to teach them because they just trim in and they keep it in, right? And when you're changing angles, you always have to match that angle with the correct sail trim. The other thing you'll realize as well, and you're seeing the same guys here, they all sit pretty much almost the same, right? The same seating position, the legs are kind of the same. I like the back leg to be a little bit like right on the rail, but they all have the same seating position, so they're able to move their upper bodies to go through every wave. So your upper body is your balance, your main sheet is your trim, and your steering is what drives you through the waves. So technically what you'll see from these guys is that the rudder will stay straight to so that there's less drag, right? Because when you move the rudder, you're creating drag. So the rudder will stay straight as long as they can until there's waves that will slow them down if they crash. So they stay straight, and then they see some waves that look dangerous, and here comes the steering through the wave. You can see they're all sitting pretty much the same. As I said, for me, I prefer the back leg closer to the rail, but you'll see the same thing. And it's just all about the trimming, the steering, and the balance with their shoulders to rebalance the boat for every wave. So you kind of see the same technique for most of these guys, almost same. So this guy here on the screen is, you see his back foot goes out, then it goes back into the middle. So he keeps changing his technique, and that's just all depending on the velocity of the wind, but also what type of waves he's dealing with at that time.
Yeah, and what I think we'll do is like first we'll watch the video, then Omar and me will comment, and then we'll watch the video again, and then you can like try and see if our comments made any sense the second time you watch it. And I also would just like to add, and in the course we'll talk about many different styles, but generally you could just say that it seems to me that Manuel is a sailor who's like he really wants to point high, and then whenever there's this little tiny stop or friction in the water, a wave, then he is solving that problem by solving it when it happens. But so he goes high and tries to keep his speed. But the other approach it could be, especially the heavier sailors, what they're using is they point a little bit lower, so they get a little bit more power, and they use that power to work the body, and then they like pull up the boat in a different way. So they go low and they pull up the boat while Manuel is like he's high from the beginning, and then he goes low to avoid stopping completely. And I think this also affects your body position a lot because Manuel, if you look at him, he's not that aggressive. He's quite smooth in the way he's sailing, which is pretty similar to Henry that I coached, and how he's sailing the boat as well. So let's restart this video again, and then we watch through Manuel, and then we move on to the next sailor immediately, so you don't need to stop the video after. So we start from the beginning in 3, 2, 1, now.
Here the sail opens.
Yeah, you can see he's working the main sheet as Omari mentioned all the time, and now you can see he's high, and then he's almost stopping. So if he was a little bit heavier, he probably would have stopped also. But then you can see he's like going low and released immediately when he feels like, okay, I need to do that to maintain my speed. Now you can see how far in the boom is also.
There you go. Same leading position, same technique, not attack. And sometimes what can happen is that you change your technique for depending on the tack that you're on, not just because you're going from left to right, but a lot of times the waves are different on the tack. So your technique could change as well just because the wave patterns are different.
So here we have world champion Nikolaos Pappas. He was second in this regatta. He's a very light sailor.
Yeah, nice sail trim there.
In my opinion, a little bit similar style. It feels like he's going very high, almost stopping, but he's barely making it.
His steering is a bit different. His steering is more tight in terms of he is very tight on the rudder, so it's not too much, very, very small. You can see, yeah, stacking.
Okay, so we can stop here.
Mm-hmm.
Mario, do you have something else to add?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, again, from these styles, I think from anyone who's watching this, again, as Thörn says, these are some of the best sailors in the world. Nikolaos was the world champion, and Manuel was fourth, right? So you're looking at some of the best Opti sailors, and one of the things you got to look at is what are the things that are very consistent in what they're doing, right? So as I said, for boat speed, there's 3 things that matters: the balance, your sail trim, and your steering, right? Or your lack of steering, depending on the sea state. And you can see that their technique is very, very similar, where their body is as far forward as possible. And for every single chop or wave, you see them moving their shoulders to rebalance the boat. That's the balance that we're talking about. And if you're sailing upwind for 20 minutes, you go through millions of waves. And these guys who are up front are the ones who move their bodies for every single wave, right? Same thing I saw with Nikolaos. There's a little bit of sail trim as well. Every time he changes angle, which is good, keeps opening up the sail and then it breathes and coming back. The one difference I saw between them is that Manuel, he steers a little bit looser, while Nikolaos, he kind of is a little bit stiffer on the steering. Not bad, just you can tell he doesn't steer as much, right? And that's just maybe a personal preference or maybe how he feels comfortable. all these guys have a little bit of difference to their technique, but again, everyone will have pretty much their own technique that they will develop based off of what Tom said, their size difference and things like that, or just the way they coach or what feel comfortable for them. But there's certain things that are standard, the body movement for every wave, the positioning of their body, the sail trim, and then they decide if they need to steer more or less based off of the sea state.
As we mentioned steering, and I think most of you guys have tried different types of steering, but I still want to show you a little bit like what we're actually talking about. Here we have a boat, and normally, if you're a super beginner, you just sail in a straight line. And this is what you learn in sailing school, but obviously that's not the fastest. So what we need to do here is we need to steer in the waves, and you can see here on the left that we have the top and bottom of the waves as lines, so it's from a helicopter perspective. So what we want to do here basically is, in a simplified terms, is we go up towards the top of the wave, and then we go down at the back of the wave. And normally you get some extra height from this compared to if you do nothing. But depending on the conditions, you can also be faster, and there are many tweaks to this. It's not as simple as just going up and down. When we say up can be your normal course. It could be above your normal course, or up could even be under your normal course, depending on the circumstances. And then you have to combine this steering with your main sheet and also your body work. So for example, if you're very good with your body, sometimes you don't have to go up or to go down as much because you can use your body to compensate. And that's why you see all these small differences between the top sailors. So Omari mentioned that Nikolaos, he was much tighter in the steering. And as a result, he was probably stopping more in the waves, which means he had to use his body more or compensate more with the main sheet. In this case, I think it was a combination that he's a little bit lighter, and also that he likes to use his body a little bit more aggressive, like all the time. It wasn't so hard. When I say aggressive, I don't mean that Nikolaos did it harder. It looked like he did it just more often. Another point of this steering is that if you imagine you're coming with speed here from number one and you go hit the top of the wave, then the bow is lifting up, so you're jumping a little bit. And when the boat is on the upwind, and also a boat that's not planing, which you only do on the downwind or reaching an opti, a boat that's not planing is always faster the longer the boat is in the water. So if you cut the top part of the boat, your boat gets shorter, which is basically what's happening when you're jumping, and then you will lose speed. So that's why it's very important, and not only when you work in wave here, like to lift the bow so you don't hit the wave, but also immediately after, if you bear away, you will have a closer distance to the water, because you can see here, like if you go lower, you're closer to the top. And also you will have to use your body to push down the boat. And some people don't even, like some people use all their body here to just lift the bow here, but then they do nothing in step two. And some people do like 50-50, and some people I know have a technique in some, not all the waves, but in smaller waves, they don't even care that much about lifting the bow here in step one. They only care about step two, so that they can get an extra push here. And all these are different techniques that we don't have time to talk about now, but it's still very important that you understand this, that there are these differences, and then we will mention them, and then you can study more and you can ask questions and we'll follow up. But okay, let's move on to the next video, guys. And we'll start the video at 1 minute 25 seconds. And then we'll watch through Nikolaos again, and then we move on to the next sailor after Nikolaos. So here we can see Nikolaos here all the time. He's doing these small, basically it's like trying to, I think he's doing like a little more pulling. He's not so worried about the crash. It doesn't look like he's trying to avoid a crash that much, but he's trying to like pull the boat with some extra height, is my opinion. What do you think there, Omari?
Yeah, like I said, yeah, you're right. Like he's a little bit more stiff because I think, like as you say, he's not worried so much about the wave because the boat's not stopping. Yeah, he's very, very still on the rudder.
Yeah. Next up, we have Alexander from Sweden. I've coached him extensively when he was younger, and in the later years, he was a lot with Fernando. So he has knowledge from many different coaches. And here is, of course, a lot heavier. So here he's by far the heaviest sailor of the ones we have shown so far. And here it looks like, at least to me, if you look at his body work, it's less about getting that height and trying to pull up the boat because it's heavier now. It's more about just keeping the boat smooth and maintaining that speed that he needs, because he will stop much faster than the rest. So here, I think you can actually see that it looks like he had a better flow. We can pause now. But it was also at the cost of height. So it was a little bit lower than the other two sailors all the time. And of course, it's really hard to see in the video, but if you had seen them on reality, he was always pointing a little bit lower. Omari,
Yeah.
what do you think
Yeah, no,
about
I thought he was a lot smoother with his body. Also with the steering, because I'm looking like that a lot. I didn't see a lot more with his sail trim. He seemed like he had his sail a little bit further out. Maybe that's because of the size, to keep the sail much deeper and full for the power because of his size. But you can see that his steering was very deliberate. Like, he wouldn't steer unless he had to. So you would see him go from being very straight, and then all of a sudden you see these two of these big steering going through the waves. So that's what I mean. Like, you know, in certain coaches, like my style is very similar to that, where you stay straight unless you see waves, a set of waves that you have to steer through in order not to crash, right? So his style was one where he was more deliberate with the steering, and that steering only came when he saw a set of waves coming that if he did not steer, he would crash and slow his speed. So that was really good, because you see kind of three different styles already from three different type sailors, which is very, very good to see. But he was very much more deliberate with when he wanted to steer. Other than that, he would stay very straight and very smooth to maintain, I guess, boat speed as much as he can without disrupting the speed.
All right, so let's go back to 2:25, and then we will watch Alexander again and then move on to the next sailor. So we start at 2 minutes 25 seconds in 3, 2, 1, now. Here you can see that Alexander's normal force is much lower, and then he's doing
you can see the rudder as well.
Maneuvers to gain that height back that he's losing. But here now he's on the low course, for example.
You see what I mean by the steering? Very straight until he has to. And then you see one of those, big down, and he goes back very straight.
Yeah, and Alexander's technique is interesting because the previous years, because he was lighter before this year, he was actually by far the fastest sailor in lighter winds. So I think he had just bullets one day at the rock when he was still light. And now he's heavier and he has to adapt.
He changed his technique a bit, yeah.
Next up is Will. I don't know if Will is here with us today, actually. Could be.
He might.
Yeah. Anyway, also light sailor. And we just want to point out that you can see some sailors have the back foot towards the side and some have it towards the middle. They're just different styles. The tack there was a bit interesting. He used I call it the Ukrainian tack because I think the Ukrainians mastered that first, but he's helping push the boat for the wave. Here we can see this is very interesting in my opinion, because I think it's different because he's light but still going for speed. He's sailing a little bit more like Alexander, but he's still light in my opinion. So that's very different.
Also his starting point with his trim, and I mean, these are small things that we see kind of like as coaches, but his starting point with his trimming is way further out than all three of the guys that we saw, right? So he will start right over the corner, you can see, and he even goes sometimes outside, which again, he's going for speed. So he's not necessarily going for a lot of pointing, but with that speed, he can also come up with and point. So that was very interesting to see. His starting point for his trimming is a little bit further out than what we've seen from the other three guys.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to you have your own style, but if you can also switch between styles, that's like next level even for the best sailors in the world. So that in certain situations, it's a lot better to gain that extra height, and in other situations, you can do this speed tactics like Will did there. So if you can swap between both of them, I think that's the best. So let's go back so we can watch Will from the start.
Yeah, you can clearly see his trim.
Yeah.
It's further out with his trim right there.
But it could also, I for sure it's the trim, it's an intentional speed tactics here, but He's probably also having his mast brake more forward, and that also affects where you get the point. Like, so if you have your mast brake forward, of course the boom's going to come out, and it will look like you cheated in much harder than you actually did. If you have the mast more back. So even for us, I think it's very hard to see what the mast brake is just based on the drone
Yeah,
video.
from aerial. Yeah.
But I would say for sure he has to maybe the mast a little bit more forward, and but most important thing is that I think he's dropping down low to maintain that speed like Alexander did in a way, but he's light.
Yeah, you can also see Thörn, if we're watching closely, huge shift in his technique from one tap to the other. I don't know if you've realized that now that he's back onto, I don't know, that was port. He had that back leg was more in the middle, and on starboard, that back leg was under him. So again, different technique, again, based off of the sea state there for him. So that's one thing I saw. And then the other thing was definitely, I think he was sailing a little bit more loose on the trim, which again, it's not a good or a bad thing if you're doing it in the right way and you feel fast. Having the sail out is not bad because you keep the shape of the sail. The sail is much deeper because there's no mast bend or anything like that to flatten the sail. That's when the sail is its deepest. So he's definitely sailing for power with that setup. And the big thing would just be technique change on the different tacks. That's kind of what I saw.
So now we're gonna go to 4 minutes 25 seconds, which is the end of Will's video, and then we'll move over to Francisco from Argentina. And I think that's really interesting because I remember he was quite fast in this regatta, but not in all conditions. And we can also see that his technique is a little bit different. So now the hint I gave you is that look at the main sheet is working a lot less. It's like almost fixed compared, like if you compare to the other guys. And how is that possible? Like they have the same equipment, right? It's not like they have completely different setups. They all have the same mast, same boom, same sail, same everything in this regatta. So everything that is different stems from the technique. So if one guy is faster, it's only the technique and the weight, of course. Let's see, did one of you guys figure it out? What do you guys think was the key for Francisco to keep his speed when he didn't really do what others did? So if you think you know it or you want this try, just write in the comment section. Just say, hey, I want to talk, and then we'll let you in. How did he keep his speed with such a stiff main sheet? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What did he actually do?
I think the biggest thing to understand with the sail trim is what happens when we trim the sail in and what happens when we ease it out, right? And what I say a lot is when we trim the sail, the harder we trim the sail, the more the mast will begin to bend. And when that starts to happen, it flattens out the sail. So technically, the way the sail is built is pretty much for it to not be flat and bent, but for it to have depth, similar to what Francisco had, right? So it doesn't really hurt to have the sail further out as it would if you have it super cranked in because it changes the dynamics and the setup of the sail. So if you can have the sail out a little bit, it's better for you to keep consistent speed because the sail has this nice depth and you're not messing it up by over trimming. So for him, I think he was able to keep his speed because he had his sail trim pretty much right at the corner. And he doesn't seem like a very big sailor. I don't know him personally. But if you have the sail at the corner, the sail has the correct shape, the right depth, then the boat will keep moving. So you can get away with not trimming. Some of the other guys before were sailing a little bit more for height. So what they will do is trim in to get the height, right? The sail gets flat, you steal your height, and when they start slowing down a little bit, they ease and they head down a little bit, make the sail deeper and go for speed. With him, he just seemed like he was more straight lined, where he was going for more speed by keeping the sail nice and deep and just going fast.
Yeah, so guys, let's go to, let's say 4:35, and then we're gonna start the video together, and we'll watch it again. So we start 4:35 in 3, 2, 1, now. So I would also like to add here that it looks to me that he's like when you sail a boat, you can pick your angle, and then you can pick slightly lower, so you get a little bit more pressure in the sail, a little bit over pressure, or you can be straight, or you can be high. And depending on your size, different techniques are better. But here it looks like he's always pointing this little lower than
Yeah.
the optimal one, which gives him a little bit of overpower. When I say overpower, I mean like compared to the normal power. I don't mean that he's actually overpowered and has a high or anything. But he's using that overpower to move the body more, and then he's trying to pull the boat up more. So it's like pulling it up from this slightly lower angle. The average angle that he's pointing is lower, and then it's like pulling it up with his body. So that was what I could see.
But also there, Tom, the same thing. Like if he's sailing low mode there, right, having the sail out is pretty much matching his angle, which is perfect, right? It would be in the opposite if he was sailing low mode and having the sail really far trimmed in, that would be slow. So what I'm saying is basically what you're saying. His angle and his sail trim is kind of matching, which is why he can have that good speed consistently, I think.
So next one is Tomas from Argentina. Omari, maybe you can comment on this.
And who is this sailor?
This is Tomas, also Argentinian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. I think they're not having the same technique from the
Yeah. So
what I can see.
a huge difference. So Thomas is very aggressive with his body. Very aggressive with his body. Not a lot of steering, not a lot of steering, not a lot of sail trim in and out. So basically, what I think is he is not steering a lot because he thinks that he can use his body movements to get through the waves. So if you can look, you can clearly see he's much more aggressive with his body movements through the wave. Not a whole lot of steering, which tells me that he's trying to keep the flow under the boat without creating drag by moving the rudder too much. And to be able to do that, he would have to really, really move his body to get through the waves without having to steer. So just completely different. Lots of body movement, not a lot of steering. And what I didn't see wasn't a lot of trimming differences either. It seemed like he had his main sheet pretty set at a certain place and was just using his body movement to kind of keep the boat fast through the waves.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it really looked also like because he used his body to get through the waves and like in height, the angle of his body work was a lot different than like the shape of it. Normally you can see how the sailors are rotating in a similar pattern, and you can see that his pattern was completely different. Anyway, let's move on to the next sailor. So Andrea Demurtas from Italy. So we start in 3, 2, 1 now. You remember that image that showed you how to steer in a wave, and then we had like step 1 and step 2, 3, 4, and so on. And then I said like in step 1, you're basically working to avoid crashing into the wave. And then in step 2, you're working to like reaccelerate the boat. Of course, these guys don't like need to do that so much because they don't lose so much speed to begin with. But there is this technique in step 2. What you can do is you can help the boat reaccelerate by pushing down on the boat. And of course, this is a little bit like if you do it once, probably fine. If you do it twice or 3 times, probably gonna be yellow flag by the umpires. But what you can do is like you push down with your feet, which is basically like you're moving inwards with your body and then you use your feet to push the boat down in step 2, 3. When I say down, I mean to leeward. And then you like get this mini pump that's not really visible in the sail because because when you steer also you're gonna adjust for the pump you would otherwise get if you did nothing. And if you sail like that, you can get extra speed when you approach the next wave. So and I saw Andrea do that in this video once or twice, and I think all of these top sailors are actually doing it. It was just a little bit maybe depends on the conditions that some sailors they stop doing it when they have enough wind because then you don't gain so much from it. But when it's lighter, I think they're all doing it. And here I could see Andrea trying to do it sometimes even in this wind, which I would say is like a little bit more than when it's established to do so. What I'm talking about in step 2 here, when you say where they said don't lift the bow, like immediately when the boat lands and the bow is like sinking down into the wave, if at that moment you can help push the boat a little to leeward, it would be like a pump with extra speed that you use in step 3. There you can see it. Can you see it? So if you started at the
Yeah,
same time as I did, then you could see what I meant, like when he's trying to.
I did see. Yeah,
He's not trying to hike out. He's trying to do push. And I mean, it's really hard to do both. So in some ways, like because if you go in and then you need to go out again, then you're really like, extremely yellow flag. So
yeah,
either you go in and then you're happy with the push after the wave, or you do to avoid in front of the wave. So different techniques. Uh, but also like in lighter wind, you can actually do both of it because then the waves are much shorter, so the same movement can like be put together. But if you do it in these conditions, it's just extremely illegal. Yeah, he tried to do a mini one there as well.
yeah.
So it's a little bit different. In my opinion, I don't think it's that great. I think it's probably better to sail like the others did, to be honest, because it's too much. I mean, here you can see it when he goes in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So yeah, it was great that
Yeah,
we could see it. It's more normally a lightning technique, but it's good to see it here as
yeah,
well.
and I mean, again, there you see another difference in technique from another top sailor. And one of the biggest things I pull from that, since we're talking about technique and speed, I've been focusing on the 3 things that I think that are most important for boat speed, which is the balance and the trim and the steering. But you can see with Andrea there, he's also very, very quiet on the steering. In a straight line, if you watch the video, he does not move the rudder a lot. And again, people ask the difference. I say all the time, for me, if you don't have to move the rudder, you don't move it, because once you start moving the rudder, it's turning sideways, right? And you're beginning to create drag once you start turning the rudder. So the only time, I think you should really use the rudder is if those waves ahead of you are big enough that if you don't use a rudder, you will crash. If you don't steer through them, you're going to crash and you're going to lose speed. So he was very still on his rudder, and that was clear. And we've had maybe 3 or 4 people that we've seen from these videos who are very still, and we've had others who are very active steering. So it's no right and wrong. It's just understanding why you're doing what you're doing and stuff, and trying to do them at the right time where you're maximizing your speed. So that was clear to see that he is definitely not heavy on the steering.
Yeah, we are running over. Not that it matters. We love to talk about sailing, but we still have lots of content left. So Margaux from Hong Kong and Carl from Denmark. So let's start together at 7:25 in 3, 2, 1 now. And then we can see here. Now, maybe a lady which is heavier, so she has to go inside. This is not, in my opinion, the same technique Andrea used. She's inside, but she's inside all the time, and she's basically working backwards just to avoid the waves, like avoid eating it. So I wouldn't. This is not the same. That it might look similar to what Andrea did sometimes, but it's not the same technique. She's just doing the normal one to avoid a wave, but she can't sit on the side just to sit inside. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
Bruce
again,
mentioned, yeah.
it's just all about the balance again. As you said, she may feel like she's a little bit bigger. The windward heel probably is not the right angle to go through those chops. So having a more flat balanced boat is probably easier for her through those waves. Yeah, so that's probably why she's using that technique. It's more about just getting the right balance to be able to go through the waves. And again, you can see, very little movement on the rudder once you're sitting in like that. But again, it might be fast for her having a more balanced boat.
Yeah. All right. And then we also saw, in the end, we saw Carl there. You can look it through yourself. These sailors are very good. But Carl has a similar technique to some of the rest.
Yeah, so we'll start from the beginning here. In 3, 2, 1, and start now. So this is a sailor called Oliver Holt. and he was one of the bigger sailors. He was like 115 pounds. But if you watch his way of steering the boat, he's more aggressive, but very smooth in his technique, right? So this is in Miami where the chop is very aggressive and steep. But what you can see, I mean, in my screen is very small. You can definitely see him changing his legs quite a bit. Again, stay straight with the rudder until he sees those big waves where he has to actually make an adjustment, right? But with him, he's a much bigger sailor. And what he does really well is he always changes his technique. You can see his legs and feet changing based off of the waves that are coming. You can see his steering changes as well. It's not the one pattern. It just depends on what's coming. He could be very straight, then he could be very aggressive with the steering. Same with his body movement. Okay. Now this is another video, and what you can notice is that he's sitting super far forward. And the idea is to keep the weight centralized in the boat. But with that, he has to be very aggressive with his shoulders to keep the bow from crashing, right? But on this tack, you can see that he's very still on the rudder, but become more aggressive with his upper body, especially his hips. So just watch it.
Yeah, I would also like to add here that these waves are very short and choppy. And we talked about earlier, that's very important to get the bow down. And the problem is, like, if you have to move back and forth with your body, you cannot do it that quickly. Like, it would be like this because the waves are so short. But if you then sit forward, as Oliver did here in this video, then of course, a normal position would push the bow down by itself. So it's basically a question about how much back your upper body is in order to like compensate for that. So then you can always stay in this back position. Please, this question: is this a little back or is it a lot back? And I really like. I've seen your sailors because we don't meet that often, but we meet like twice a year or something. And then I see your sailors, and I think they're all really fast in these
in the
chopping conditions and with small waves, about like medium-sized waves. It's really interesting to see how to work. And I also noticed that they excel in the upper body work. But I think we'll see more of that in this downwind video that you have prepared for us.
Yes. And with the downwind, it's very important, again, with boat speed, three things that matter: steering, sail trim, and balance. With the Optimus, with the square bow, just like upwind, it's very important to keep the bow out. If you start to surf and the bow crashes into the wave in front of you, you lose all momentum. So this sailor here is Annie Ulmer. She was a silver medalist at the Euros in, I think it's 2023 or something. And if you watch this video, you will see there was very few times, if any, if she ever crashes the bow. You will also see once she starts to surf, she brings her body into the middle. And the idea is to turn the boat into like a surfboard, right? Really flat so that there's balance and they're surfing the entire time. And as she heads down into the barrel of the waves, you'll see her ease the sail a bit more as she's going further down. So the angle, the sail trim, and the balance of the boat are matching. So we'll start this video in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. So just keep your eye on the bow, how it doesn't crash at all, right? And she adjusts her body, surfs, slowly she moves forward, never letting the bow crash. That's the crash right there. There we go. Nice, nice. Nice surf, down, 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 down. Center the boat, nice. Another big one, down, slides forward. Back. Into the middle on the dagger board, very good. All right, so we paused after the first one. And I mean, basically what I was explaining is you see the sail trim and the body is the same. So you have to do a macro trim with your body would be sliding back and forth, right? That's bigger movement. And then a micro trim with your body will be just your upper body going forward. So she has to determine whether or not the bow is high enough for me to do a macro movement, which is a slide, or the bow is not so high and I need to do a micro movement, which is just leaning my upper body forward. So it's a game of trying to keep the bow out And a lot of it has to do with, am I sliding or am I leaning or am I sliding and leaning, right? So in that video, you could see that she kept the bow of the boat out because she was always balancing whether or not she needed to slide forward or not. And then once she started to surf, the weight came into the middle where there's no heel, but a very flat boat like a surfboard. And as she heads down into the wave to stay on it, she eases the sail a little bit further to match the sail trim for the angle. So, Thörn, I'm not sure if you saw any of that.
Yeah, I mean, based on experience, I remember that your sailors on the downwind, they use the sliding maneuver a lot less than my sailors, and they're using the upper body. And I think it's like in line with their whole technique that you teach them because they're always much more flexible and better with the upper body than my sailors are. Personally, I don't think it really matters if you overcompensate with the upper body or if you slide with your butt. Both probably work equally fine as long as you know you do it with the correct timing. I don't really have any preference there, but for what I like what I saw in this video, the waves look really weird though. Not easy to
Yeah, so
find.
that's actually out in the ocean. So
Yeah.
it was a lighter day, but
Yeah.
this one, the next video on 241 is inside the bay and the wave's a bit shorter. But again, the goal in this video was the same thing, keeping the bow out from crashing, never dragging the bow because that's slow because it's a square bow, and timing her surf, and you'll see the body movement work to keep the bow from crashing the entire time. So we'll start from 241. I think this is the last video here, and we can just watch it through and then see, if we see anything that anybody wants to comment on. So we'll start in 3, 2, 1 now. Bow up, a little bit of a slide, starts to move back for the next wave.
Very nice.
There we go. Bow is still clean, no crashing yet. Big wave there. Long surf. Comes up to get speed, surf and down. Body goes forward, bow is still up, no crashing. Very good, maintain the speed.
I really like those micro steerings, adjusting the south
Yep.
way. Even when she's low, she can go high again and then low again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really like that.
So the idea is always to charge. Once you surf, that surf will come to an end. And before it comes to an end, you start to come up to charge for the next wave. On.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my internet died for a second there. Am I back in business?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, continue. Yeah, I guess you were continuing.
Yeah, we went through already. Basically watched the video and I was talking through it. So but again, like downwinds, it's the same thing. Anything with boat speed, it's the same thing where your sail trim has to match your body and the balance and your steering. So on the downwind, you could see clearly those three things in play, right? Which is just just the key to be fast in all different directions of sailing.
Yeah, and I would just like to add quickly here that when we were speaking about sails earlier, we just focus on the upwind, but of course the sail also, like how you trim, but also which type of rigging you have and the design of your sail affects your downwind speed. In my personal opinion, I think they can be maybe in strong wind, maybe 15, 20 meter difference depending on your sail. So it actually matters. We won't have time to go through which sail is good and why now, but it's something to think about. Not only focus on upwind, but also sometimes focus on downwind speed as well. Good. Let's bring in some questions before we end this session because we talked a lot and lots of videos for you guys. And all these videos will be, of course, and more will be available in the course in case you decide to buy that. But let's shoot and fire away some questions. Florian, welcome. You can unmute yourself and turn on your video.
Hello.
Great, we can see you now and hear you as well.
Sorry, sometimes a little bit slow, my internet. Yeah, I have a question. Do you want to put the boat flat over the waves or you want to hold it windward? What do you think? I think it's faster, but it's difficult because you can gain speed through the waves. So for me, it's difficult.
We're talking about bigger waves or like big like rollers, or are we talking about like smaller chop?
Choppy.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is we have to understand what we do with our body for the wave. So when it's choppy, if you go with windward heel, right, the idea of a windward heel is to force the boat to head down, right? So if you have no sail and you lean to windward of a boat, the natural angle for the boat to do is to go down. Just like if you go to leeward, the boat wants to head up. So the worst thing you can do in chop is to have leeward heel, because now you're asking the boat to head up with a square bow into chop that's coming right onto your bow. So if you have a little bit of pressure and medium winds, the best thing to have is a little bit of windward heel, which that little chime in the corner to windward will help to cut the wave. But also with that windward heel, you're asking the boat, I want to head down for more speed to have power to go through the chop.
Okay.
Yeah, I can also chime in a little bit there. And first of all, I agree that if you have chop and if you have waves, if you screw up and you get hit with a windward heel, it's going to cost you a lot. It's a lot safer to get hit like with a flat boat or even leeward heel. But then also, I think more important to talk about is like how the feeling changes in the boat when you start going to windward heel. So like I feel that sometimes sailors, even in some conditions where they want to have windward heel at certain points, when you have windward heel too much, you lose the feeling a little bit and it's harder to get the correct timing. So I know, for example, Henrik, he was the world champion, but he rarely, if ever, had windward heel, even in flat water light wind, because he wanted to have that extra feeling, because he thought with extra feeling he could gain more than he could gain from the default windward position. So that was his strategy. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but that's another way of looking at it.
Yeah, I also think if it's really light and choppy, windward heel is pretty difficult, because then you really lose the feeling. But also, like, if you stand the risk of hitting a wave and completely slowing down. But if you're in nice medium winds where the boat's consistently moving, then a little bit of windward heel, not trying to heel like downwind, but having a little bit of windward heel, sending the message of the boat that I want to go fast for you, so you to sail low by having windward heel. I'm telling the boat to sail lower, right? That helps. But also, at the end of the day, with the waves coming, every time the boat goes through the wave, it's doing this, right? So if you have a little bit of windward heel and you want to stay flat, the idea is not to start flat, because then the waves you can see onto the windward side. So you want a little bit of heel to windward, so that every time you go through that wave and the boat's rocking, it actually is rocking to a flat position as opposed to a windward leeward heeling situation where you're now losing. So with nice pressure, a little bit of windward heel to hike out, moving your body, of course, trying to not crash the square bow as much as possible. But I do think with nice pressure, you can hike out a little bit, windward heel, and the boat will go pretty good through the chop.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, no, well, I mean, that's about it. I think we covered quite a bit. I mean, in my opinion, happy that so many people were able to come on for Thörn. And you didn't speak a lot about who you guys are as a company and what you're doing. So I think maybe you have to do that at some point. And
Yeah, sure. I can give a
yeah,
short summary of what we do. So basically, we try to put together this course. We have the Road to Gold standard course, the original that was developed by Hamish Wilcox. That's for adults. And then we have the Optimist course that I'm doing together with Pablo Ruiz. And it's not only like we just want to sell course stuff. What we really want to do is to bring together a community where we exchange ideas. So that's why we have these Q&As and tech talks. And we also want to create this library of knowledge. So I think this is something that's a problem today. We have all these elite coaches in the world, but everyone just sits on their own knowledge. And when they, leave the business, then the knowledge is gone. But now we're trying to save everything. And also because we have this streaming division, which means that we broadcast the regattas. And when we do that, we also get to record all the sailors, and then we can save sailors for the future. Basically, their videos will live on forever. And I think that's something no one has tried before. So that's what we're trying to do.
there you go. Pretty nice, man. Love it.
All right, Omari. Well, thank you for coming and joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Hope to see you on the water pretty soon. And I hope to see you all guys as well. I will personally be doing the Spanish series, of the series. I will be at Princess Sofia if you're into Olympic sailing. So what will you do, Omari?
I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can get to Europe in the spring, maybe Garda or something. But we'll see how that goes. I have Orange Bowl coming up, clinic, so that's a big one. But then the spring, I'm trying to see if we can do some international stuff. That's pretty much the direction right now.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys. Take care and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Take care.